Okay, Gigi, I know that you probably saw all this testimony, and I understand why the prosecution's calling these witnesses, and the prosecution is doing a very good job in their case. The lawyers, I think, are both doing a very good job. But, I kind of feel, and I'm interested in your point of view, that some of these witnesses, what they give it, they also take it away. The defense lawyer is able to get in there to talk about essentially what he is witnessing is Mr. Floyd, I guess, quote unquote, not necessarily cooperating with these officers and telling him, look, man, I'm paraphrasing now, give it up. They're going to win, So in a certain sense, I'm always thinking about summation. What do I want to be saying in summation? And one of the things I think the defense is developing here, and I'm not saying it justifies it. So before people get agitated, I'm not saying it justifies. We haven't gotten to the use of force and the knee on the neck yet, but it's fitting the defense narrative that this was an uncooperative person, and that certainly does not help the prosecution. What do you think about that? Am I off?
You're not off. I think that's a good angle to take, Bob. But I'll come back at you with this. There's a lot of people in this country that have to learn what it means to comply or die. All right. So there's some people in the black and brown people specifically, they're not allowed to resist arrest. All right. Because they find themselves in this situation. They're taught that you follow police officers' orders or you may die in that situation. And in this case, McMillan is pleading with George Floyd to just comply, get in the car. You're not going to win, which is a positive for the defense because it does paint George as uncooperative and uncompliant. But I don't think it rises to the level of Mr. McMillan believing that George Floyd was an inherent problem that couldn't be handled in a dignified way that, didn't leave him dead on the street.
Yeah, and look, there's no question, Eric, that that kind of level of quote unquote resistance is not something that should result in death. There's no doubt about that. But the defense is going to be going into the issue with regard to cause of death down the road. So from the standpoint of at least right now at the scene, as Mr. McMillan is describing it, the defense attorney is certain to say that at least at that point in time, it's not just a snapshot in a moment, it's a continuum of issues up to and including the young man who worked in the store that said that Mr. Floyd, was incoherent when that whole encounter was going down, which also fits within the defense narrative. I'm not saying it's winning the day. I'm just saying that this prosecution, when you put a witness on this, you don't want as a prosecutor this coming out for certain.
Play to the narrative that Mr. McMillian is saying to George Floyd, hey, you can't win, essentially give up whatever you're doing. That gives rise to the inference that George Floyd was doing something in that he was trying to get away from the officers or not cooperate with them or something to that effect. But what this testimony also does, which helps the prosecution, is that it shows George Floyd was clearly in distress. There's no dispute about that. He's saying, I can't breathe, over and over and over again. And then what happens afterwards? Derek Chauvin gives no aid whatsoever. He does not try to help this person who is clearly in distress, and it just sort of shows the callousness of that behavior of Mr. Chauvin. So in that sense, I think it was helpful for the prosecution.